The contract sat between them like a weapon. Briar Lawson stared at the man across the mahogany desk. CEO Jun Woo, Seoul's most powerful CEO, devastatingly beautiful in his tailored suit, rumored to prefer men. Their families had arranged this marriage for business, nothing more. But when his dark eyes met hers, something flickered. Hunger, recognition, desire so raw, it stole her breath. He stood abruptly, jaw clenched, looking at her like she'd just shattered every assumption he'd built about himself. Sign it, he said, voice rough. Before I do something we'll both regret. Welcome to Afro-Korean Stories TV, besties. We just hit 3,000 subscribers. I'm so grateful for your support towards this channel. I will continue to do my best to bring you good stories, but you will only get notified if you are subscribed and your notification is turned on. Hurry and do that before we continue. Briar's hand trembled as she picked up the pen. This was insane. She was agreeing to marry a stranger, a cold, untouchable billionaire who reportedly had zero interest in women. Her father's company was drowning in debt, and this arrangement was the only lifeline they had. CEO Jun Woo needed a wife to satisfy his traditional family and secure a crucial merger. It was business, nothing personal. Except the way he was looking at her felt intensely personal. She signed her name with sharp, deliberate strokes. Jun Woo took the contract without touching her hand, but she felt the heat radiating from him anyway. Up close, he was even more devastating. Sharp cheekbones, full lips pressed into a hard line, eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed armor. "The wedding is in 2 weeks," he said, his Korean accent making even business sound sensual. "My assistant will handle the arrangements. You'll move into my penthouse 3 days before to avoid media speculation." That's it? No getting to know each other. No pretense of, "This is a contract, Miss Lawson, not a romance." But his eyes said something different as they traced her curves, lingering on her lips before he caught himself and looked away. "I'll see you in 2 weeks." He left without another word, and Briar sat alone in the vast office, wondering what she'd just agreed to. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparations. Briar quit her job, packed her life into boxes, and tried to ignore her mother's concerned questions about marrying a man rumored to be gay. Tabloids had speculated about Jun Woo's sexuality for years, pointing out that he was never seen with women, never dated publicly, and kept an icy distance from everyone regardless of gender. "Maybe he's just private," Briar's best friend Liana suggested over coffee. "Or maybe he's asexual. Or maybe it doesn't matter because this isn't a genuine marriage," Briar interrupted. "It's business. 2 years, then we divorce quietly and both get what we need." But she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her in his office, like she was water in a desert, like she'd awakened something he'd thought was dead or non-existent. 3 days before the wedding, Briar arrived at Jun Woo's penthouse with her suitcases and her doubts. The space was exactly what she'd expected: modern, minimalist, expensive, and utterly devoid of personality, like living in a high-end hotel. Jun Woo wasn't there. His assistant, an efficient woman named Min Ji, showed her to a guest room and explained the house rules with professional detachment. Mr. SEO works late most nights. He prefers not to be disturbed before the chef prepares at 9 a.m. Meals and served in the dining room at 7, 1 and 8. If you need anything, use the intercom system. "Will I see him at all before the wedding?" Minji's expression flickered with something like pity. "Mr. Seo is very busy." Translation: he was avoiding her. That night, Briar couldn't sleep. The penthouse was too quiet, too perfect, too much like a beautiful prison. She wandered to the kitchen around midnight, desperate for tea and distraction, and found Jun Woo standing at the counter in nothing but pajama pants and a t-shirt. He looked up, surprised, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Without the armor of his suit, he looked younger, more vulnerable. His slightly mussed hair and exhausted features were visible. "I didn't mean to disturb you," Briar said, suddenly aware of her own appearance. Sleep shorts and a tank top that showed far more skin than she'd intended. "You're not." But his eyes said otherwise as they traced her curves before he forced his gaze away. "Can't sleep?" New place. New everything. She moved to the kettle, hyper-aware of the space between them. What's your excuse? Work. The word was clipped. There's a hostile takeover attempt I'm dealing with. At midnight? Billionaires don't sleep. But there was a hint of humor in his tone, the first crack in his icy facade. Do you want tea? They ended up sitting at the kitchen island, nursing cups of chamomile, not quite looking at each other but intensely aware of every breath, every movement. Junwoo's presence was overwhelming even in casual clothes. He radiated power and control, but there was something beneath it, something lonely. Can I ask you something? Briar said finally. You can ask. I might not answer. Are you gay? The question hung between them like a grenade. Junwoo's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he'd storm out. Instead, he met her eyes directly. Why does it matter? Because I'm about to marry you. Because I'd like to know what I'm signing up for beyond a business arrangement. The rumors are convenient, he said carefully. They keep people from asking questions, from expecting things I can't give. That's not an answer. No. His eyes were intense, burning. It's not, but it's all you're getting tonight. The wedding was a spectacle. Hundreds of guests, designer everything, media coverage that would dominate headlines for weeks. Briar wore a dress that cost more than her previous year's salary and felt like an actress playing a role. Junwoo was devastating in his tuxedo, playing the perfect groom with practiced ease. But when they stood at the altar and he lifted her veil, something shifted. His hands trembled slightly as they framed her face, and the kiss that was supposed to be perfunctory and brief became something else entirely. The moment his lips touched hers, Junwoo froze. Then he kissed her, like a drowning man finding air. Desperate, hungry, barely controlled. Briar melted into him, shocked by the intensity, by the way her body responded to his touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the officiant had to clear his throat twice to continue. The reception was torture. Junwoo barely touched her after that kiss, maintaining a careful distance while playing the attentive husband for the cameras. But Briar caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his eyes dark and hungry and conflicted. Your husband can't stop staring at you, Liana whispered. For a gay man, he looks pretty interested. He's not. Briar stopped, realizing she didn't actually know what he was. It's complicated. It looks pretty simple from here. That man wants you. But if Junwoo wanted her, why was he maintaining such a rigid distance? Why did he look tormented every time their eyes met? The wedding night was awkward and tense. They returned to the penthouse in silence, and Junwoo immediately retreated to his study with a curt, "Good night." Briar stood alone in her designated bedroom, still the guest room, she noticed bitterly, and tried not to feel rejected. This was what she'd signed up for, a marriage of convenience. No romance, no intimacy, no expectations beyond public appearances and separate lives. So why did it hurt so much? She changed into pajamas and tried to sleep, but the memory of that kiss haunted her. The way Junwoo had trembled, the barely restrained hunger in his touch, the conflict in his eyes when he'd pulled away. Whatever he was struggling with went deeper than sexuality. It felt like he was at war with himself. Around 2 a.m., she heard footsteps in the hallway. They paused outside her door and she held her breath, wondering if he'd knock. But after a long moment, the footsteps retreated. Briar lay in the darkness, feeling lonelier than she'd ever felt in her life. The next morning, Junwoo was gone before she woke. This became the pattern. He left early, returned late, and avoided being alone with her at all costs. They maintained the appearance of a happy marriage for public events, but in private, they were strangers sharing a space. A week into the marriage, Briar reached her breaking point. She found Junwoo in his study around midnight, working as always, and didn't bother knocking. "We need to talk." He looked up, surprised by her tone. "About what?" "About this farce. About the fact that we're married, but you treat me like I have the plague. About what the hell happened at our wedding that made you kiss me like that and then spend the next week avoiding me." Junwoo stood slowly, and something dangerous flickered in his expression. You want to talk about that kiss? Yes. Fine. He moved around the desk and Briar fought the urge to step back. That kiss was a mistake. It won't happen again. Why? Because this is a business arrangement. Because you deserve better than... He cut himself off, jaw clenched. Better than what? A husband who actually wants me? You think I don't want you? The question was raw, tortured. I've wanted you since the moment you walked into my office. I've spent every night for the past 3 weeks hard and aching because I can't stop thinking about your curves, your mouth, the way you look at me like you see past all my carefully constructed walls. Briar's breath caught. Then why? Because I don't know how to do this. The confession burst out of him. Because I've spent my entire life convinced I was incapable of this kind of desire. Because every relationship I've attempted ended with me feeling nothing, and everyone assumed I was gay or broken or defective. Then you appear, and suddenly I'm feeling everything, wanting everything, and I don't know how to handle it. The confession hung between them like a live wire. Briar stared at him, seeing vulnerability beneath the cold CEO facade for the first time. This powerful man was terrified, not of her, but of what she made him feel. You're not broken, she said softly. You don't know that. I know you kissed me like you were starving. I know you avoid me because you want me too much, not too little. I know. She stepped closer, bold despite her racing heart. I know I want you to. Junwoo's control snapped. He closed the distance between them, backing her against the wall with his body. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. Briar reached up to cup his face, feeling the tension thrumming through him. I've spent a week thinking I married a man who couldn't want me. Finding out I was wrong is... He kissed her before she could finish. This kiss was different from their wedding, less desperate, more deliberate, but no less intense. His hands found her waist, pulling her curves against him, and he groaned at the contact. You have no idea, he murmured against her mouth, how much I've wanted to do this. Show me. They stumbled toward his bedroom in a tangle of reaching hands and shared breath. Junwoo worshipped her slowly, reverently, like she was something precious he'd been denied his entire life. Every touch was deliberate, every kiss meaningful. When they finally came together, it felt like something fundamental shifted. Two people finding a connection neither had thought possible. Afterwards, Junwoo held her like she might disappear, face buried in her neck, breathing. Hard. I've never felt this before, he admitted roughly. Never wanted someone this way. You've awakened something in me I didn't know existed. Briar stroked his hair, feeling utterly content. Good. Because you've awakened something in me, too. The following morning, however, brought doubt. Briar woke alone again, the sheets beside her cold. Panic seized her chest. Had last night been a mistake in Junwoo's eyes? Would he regret letting his guard down? She found him in the kitchen, already dressed for work, expressionless mask firmly in place. When he saw her, something flickered in his eyes before he shut it down. Last night, he started. Was it a mistake? She finished, heart sinking. No, but it complicated things. How? Because this was supposed to be simple. Business. Now it's... He struggled for words. Now I can't stop thinking about you. Can't focus on work because I'm wondering what you're doing. Can't sleep because I want you in my bed. This isn't what I agreed to. Would you rather go back to avoiding each other? No. The word was immediate, honest. But I don't know how to do this, Briar. I don't know how to be a real husband. Then we'll figure it out together. He studied her for a long moment, then pulled her close, kissing her forehead. I have to go to Singapore for 3 days. Business that can't be delayed. When I get back, we'll talk. Really talk about what this marriage means. Promise? Promise. But 3 days became 5, then a week. Junwoo called occasionally with updates, his voice distant and professional. Briar tried not to feel abandoned, tried to focus on settling into her new life, but doubt crept in with each passing day. Had he changed his mind? Was he using the trip as an excuse to avoid dealing with their relationship? She was drowning in insecurity when Liana dragged her to a charity gala Jun Woo's company was sponsoring. "You're his wife," Liana insisted. "You should be there." The gala was exactly what Breyer expected. Seoul's elite dripping in diamonds and judgment. She felt out of place despite her designer gown, hyper-aware of the whispers following her. Seo Jun Woo's mysterious wife, the American nobody he'd married for unknown reasons. She was contemplating escape when a man approached, handsome, confident, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mrs. Seo, I'm Choi Tae-yoon, a business associate of your husband's. He didn't mention you'd be attending tonight." "He doesn't know. He's still in Singapore." "Ah." Something calculating entered Tae-yoon's expression. "Then you must be lonely, stuck in that penthouse all alone. Perhaps I could keep you company." "No." The word was cold, final, and came from directly behind Breyer. She spun to find Jun Woo standing there, still in his travel clothes, looking absolutely furious. When had he arrived? "Jun Woo, we're leaving." He took her arm with barely controlled force, not even acknowledging Tae-yoon's stammered apology. "Now." The drive back to the penthouse was tense and silent. Jun Woo's jaw was clenched so tight that Breyer could see the muscle jumping, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. She'd never seen him this angry. "Are you going to tell me what that was about?" she finally asked. "Choi Tae-yoon is a snake who's been trying to undermine my company for years. Seeing him anywhere near you." He cut himself off, pulling into the penthouse garage with barely controlled aggression. Inside, he finally exploded. "What were you thinking going there alone? Do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" Dangerous. It was a charity gala. It was a room full of people who would love to exploit any weakness I show. And you... He stopped, breathing hard. "You're the biggest weakness I've ever had. I'm not some damsel who needs protecting. I know that." The words burst out of him. But watching him touch your arm, smile at you like he had any right, knowing I've been gone for a week, and you probably thought I was avoiding you again. He pushed both hands through his hair, looking tortured. I wanted to break his hands for daring to come near you. Breyer's anger deflated, replaced by understanding. "You're jealous." Insanely. He pulled her close, forehead pressed to hers. "I cut my trip short because I couldn't stand being away from you anymore. I rushed to that gala the moment I landed because I knew you'd be there. And seeing another man trying to..." His arms tightened possessively. "You're mine, Breyer. I know I have no right to feel that way after disappearing for a week, but I can't help it." "Then stop disappearing." She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "Stop running every time things get real between us. I'm your wife, Jun Woo. Start acting like you want me to be." "I do want that." He kissed her desperately. "I want everything with you. It terrifies me how much." They made it to the bedroom this time, and what happened there erased any doubt about whether Jun Woo wanted her. He showed her exactly how much, over and over, until they were both exhausted and satisfied and tangled together in the darkness. "I'm sorry," he murmured against her hair, "for disappearing, for making you doubt, for being terrible at this. You're learning. We both are. Stay with me tonight, in my bed, always." "Always," she agreed, and finally fell asleep feeling like she was exactly where she belonged. The next few weeks brought a tentative new normal. Jun Woo still worked insane hours, but he came home to Breyer every night, and they shared breakfast every morning. They were learning from each other, his love of old movies and classical music, her passion for cooking and photography, small intimacies that transformed their contract marriage into something real. But the business world noticed the change. Suddenly, Breyer was invited to events, her opinions sought, her presence at Jun Woo's side expected. Some people were welcoming, others were calculating, looking for ways to use her against her husband. "You need to be careful," Jun Woo warned after one particularly tense dinner party. "There are people who'd love to hurt me through you." "I can handle myself." "I know, but let me worry anyway." His protectiveness was endearing and occasionally suffocating. He had security follow her discreetly, called multiple times a day to check on her, and vetted everyone who came near her with suspicious intensity. Breyer understood why. In his world, love was leverage, and showing he cared about her made them both vulnerable. She just wished he'd trust her to be more than a potential liability. A month into their real marriage, everything changed. Breyer was working from home when Minji appeared, looking uncharacteristically shaken. "Mrs. Seo, there's been an accident. Mr. Seo's car was forced off the road. He's at Seoul Memorial Hospital." The world tilted. Breyer barely remembered the drive to the hospital, barely processed Minji's explanations about the hostile takeover attempt, about enemies who'd apparently decided violence was an acceptable business strategy. All she could think about was Junwoo hurt, bleeding, alone. She found him in a private room, arguing with doctors despite the bandages wrapping his ribs and the obvious pain carved into his features. "You need to rest," the doctor was saying. "I need to handle this situation before—" Junwoo stopped when he saw Breyer in the doorway. "You shouldn't be here." "Where else would I be?" She moved to his bedside, carefully avoiding his injuries. "You're hurt." "I'm fine. It looks worse than it is." Liar. But her hands were gentle as she touched his face, checking for damage. "What happened?" "Someone decided sending me a message was worth attempted murder." His jaw clenched. "They're going to regret it." The doctor cleared his throat. "Mr. Seo needs rest, no stress, no work for at least 3 days. "Impossible. I have a company to run and enemies to destroy." Breyer made an executive decision. "Everyone out, now." The medical staff fled quickly. Once alone, she turned to Junwoo with her arms crossed. "You're going to rest. You're going to let your very capable team handle business for 3 days, and you're going to stop pretending you're invincible." Breyer? "No, you don't get to almost die and then act like it's nothing." Her voice broke despite her best efforts. "I was terrified. I thought I'd lost you before we even had a real chance." Something in his expression softened. He pulled her carefully onto the bed beside him, wincing slightly at the movement. "I'm sorry." "You're right. I'll rest." His arms came around her, holding tight. "But we need to talk about security. This attack wasn't random. Someone is targeting me, and by extension, targeting you." "What do you mean?" "I mean, whoever did this knows hurting you would destroy me. They'll come for you next." Junwoo was right. 3 days later, Breyer was leaving the penthouse for a lunch meeting when 2 men in masks grabbed her in the parking garage. She fought. Junwoo had insisted on self-defense lessons after the hospital, but they were stronger, prepared. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was her phone tumbling across the concrete, Junwoo's name still displayed from her last call. She woke in a concrete room that smelled of must and despair, hands zip-tied, head throbbing. 2 men stood guard, and through a window she could see they were in some kind of abandoned warehouse. "Finally awake," one said in Korean. "Good. Mr. Seo should be getting the video we sent by now. Let's see if his wife is worth him destroying his company." Terror spiked through her, but Breyer forced it down. Junwoo would come. She knew it with absolute certainty. She just had to survive until he arrived. Back at the penthouse, Junwoo stared at the video on his phone with absolute fury. Breyer was tied to a chair, frightened but defiant, while a distorted voice made demands. Give up the merger, step down as CEO, transfer controlling shares to their shell corporation, basically destroy everything he'd built. "Sir?" Minji stood in the doorway looking sick. "What do we do?" "Find her." His voice was empty of emotion, which was far more terrifying than rage. "Use every resource we have. Trace the video, check traffic cameras, call in every favor I'm owed. I don't care what it costs or who I have to threaten." "And their demands?" "Stall them. Make them think I'm considering it." He was already pulling on his jacket, checking weapons with practiced efficiency that revealed he wasn't just a businessman. "But I'm not giving them anything except their own deaths. This could start a war. It already has." Junwoo's eyes were black ice. "They took my wife. They signed their death warrants the moment they touched her." It took 4 hours to find the location. 4 hours of Junwoo mobilizing resources most CEOs didn't have, calling in dangerous favors, revealing connections that proved his world wasn't as legitimate as it appeared. He'd spent years building a business empire, but he'd learned from his family's criminal roots. He knew how to fight dirty. He assembled a team of men who looked more like soldiers than corporate employees and planned the extraction with military precision. "If she's hurt," he said quietly, loading his gun, "everyone in that building dies screaming." The assault was swift and brutal. Junwoo's team hit the warehouse from multiple angles, and he cut through the resistance like a knife through silk. Nothing mattered except getting to Briar. He found her still tied to the chair, bruised but alive, and something in his chest cracked open. She looked up as he burst through the door, and relief flooded her features. "I knew you'd come. Always." He cut through her bonds with trembling hands, checking for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" "Nothing permanent. You came so fast. I would have torn Seoul apart to find you." He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair. "I would have destroyed my entire company, my reputation, everything I've built. None of it matters compared to you." The drive back was silent except for Briar's occasional sniffles. Adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion and residual fear. Junwoo held her hand the entire time, thumb stroking her knuckles, jaw clenched with barely restrained emotion. Back at the penthouse, he helped her shower gently, washing away the grime and fear with tender hands. Then he carried her to bed, despite her protests that she could walk, tucking her against his body like she might disappear. "I'm okay," she whispered. "You were taken because of me." His voice was wrecked. "Because I was arrogant enough to think I could protect you just by keeping you close. I put you in danger by making you mine. You saved me. I shouldn't have had to." He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were wet. "Maybe everyone was right. Maybe I should have kept this marriage purely business. Maybe loving you makes me weak." "Don't." Briar cupped his face fiercely. "Don't you dare pull away from me now. I chose this. I chose you. And yes, your world is dangerous, but I'd rather face that danger with you than be safe without you. Even after today, especially after today, because you moved heaven and earth to find me, because you were willing to destroy everything you've built to get me back. That's not weakness, Junwoo. That's love." He kissed her desperately, and what followed was tender and intense, both of them needing to reconnect, to prove they were alive and together and unbroken. Afterwards, as they lay tangled together, Junwoo made a decision. "Marry me again." Briar laughed tiredly. "We're already married." "I know, but the first time was business, cold and transactional. I want to marry you again properly, with vows that actually mean something. I want to choose you publicly, irrevocably, not because of contracts or mergers, but because I love you." Her breath caught. "You love me?" "Desperately, completely, so much it terrifies me." His hand found hers, linking their fingers. "You awakened something in me I thought was dead or non-existent. You made me feel desire, passion, love, all the things I'd convinced myself I was incapable of. So yes, I love you, and I want everyone to know it." "Yes," Briar whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you again. I love you too." The next few months were a whirlwind. Junwoo systematically destroyed the people who'd orchestrated the kidnapping, using both legal and less than legal methods to ensure they'd never threaten anyone again. He also restructured his security, hired a personal protection detail for Briar, and began the slow process of transitioning more of his business into legitimate territory. "I want to build something clean," he explained one night. "Something our children won't have to be ashamed of." "Children?" Briar's heart skipped. "Eventually, if you want them." He pulled her onto his lap, hands splaying possessively across her stomach. "I want everything with you. A real marriage, a family, a future that isn't dictated by business needs or family expectations. I want that too." They married again on a spring morning, with only close friends and family present. This ceremony was nothing like their first. intimate, emotional, full of vows that mattered. When Junwoo promised to love her forever, to choose her every day, to build a life worth living together, there wasn't a dry eye in attendance. "You're mine," he murmured against her lips when they kissed. "Completely and irrevocably mine." "And you're mine," Briar replied. "No more doubts, no more wondering if you're capable of love. You've proven you are." The reception was joyful and intimate. Junwoo barely let her leave his side, constantly touching her hand, her waist, the small of her back, possessive and proud and utterly devoted. "He's different now," Minji commented to Liana. "Before Mrs. Seo, he was ice. Now he's human," Liana finished. "She made him human." 6 months later, Briar stood in the bathroom staring at 2 pink lines that changed everything. She was pregnant. Joy and terror warred in her chest. They'd talked about children but hadn't been actively trying. This was fast, unexpected, but somehow felt inevitable. She and Junwoo had built something beautiful from a cold business arrangement. Why not add new life to the foundation? She found him in his study, working late as always. When he saw her expression, he immediately stood, concern flooding his features. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, actually." She held out the test. "Everything's right." Junwoo stared at it, emotions flickering across his face too quickly to identify. Then he sank to his knees in front of her, hands trembling as they found her stomach. "A baby?" His voice cracked. "We're having a baby? Are you happy? Happy?" He looked up at her with such raw joy it stole her breath. "You've given me everything, Briar. You made me capable of love. You showed me I wasn't broken or defective. You gave me a real marriage, a real life. And now a family?" He pressed his face to her stomach. "How could I be anything but grateful?" They held each other as tears fell, both overwhelmed by the enormity of creating a new life together. The pregnancy was challenging but beautiful. Junwoo became even more protective, monitoring her health obsessively, ensuring she had everything she needed, personally interviewing every doctor until he found one he trusted completely. His employees watched in amazement as their ice-cold CEO transformed into a devoted, anxious father-to-be. "He actually smiled in a meeting today," one executive whispered, "about baby furniture. Who is this man?" As Briar's belly grew, so did Junwoo's wonder. He talked to their daughter every night. He was convinced it was a girl, telling stories about the world he was building for her, a world cleaner and safer than the one he'd inherited. "She'll never know violence," he promised, "never know fear or want, only love and security." "You're going to spoil her rotten," Briar predicted. "Absolutely." He kissed her belly reverently. "She's my princess. Spoiling her is my job." Labor came on a summer evening, fast and intense. Junwoo drove to the hospital like demons were chasing them, holding Briar's hand through contractions, looking absolutely terrified despite his best efforts to stay calm. "You're doing beautifully," he kept saying. "So strong, so perfect." "Easy for you to say," she gasped between pains. In the delivery room, Junwoo never left her side. He held her hand through every contraction, murmured encouragement in Korean and English, and wept openly when their daughter finally entered the world screaming. "She's perfect," the doctor said, placing the baby on Briar's chest. Junwoo stared at his daughter with naked awe, this tiny human with his dark hair and Briar's nose, screaming her displeasure at being born, perfect and alive and theirs. "Hello, beautiful," he whispered, touching her impossibly small hand. "I'm your Appa. I've been waiting so long to meet you." Later, holding his daughter while Briar slept, Junwoo made silent promises to protect her always, to give her every opportunity, to show her what real love looked like, to be the father she deserved. "Your mother saved me," he murmured to the sleeping infant. "I thought